Dr. Elena Vasquez wiped sweat from her forehead as she stepped off the transport ship. The air on Kethmoran felt thick and strange even through her breathing mask. Around her, the alien members of the expedition team were already setting up their equipment with practiced efficiency. "Stay close to the group." "Human," growled Commander Zakth, a large reptilian being from the Kronar Empire. His yellow eyes looked at Elena with obvious distrust. "This world has claimed many lives over the centuries." Elena nodded politely, though she wondered why they had brought her along at all. She was just a language expert from Earth, barely 200 years into humanity's membership in the Galactic Council. Most of the other team members had advanced degrees from universities that were older than human civilization. The dead city of Kethmoran stretched before them like a massive graveyard. Enormous stone buildings rose into the pale sky, their surfaces covered in intricate carvings and symbols. The architects who had built this place were long gone, vanished 50,000 years ago without explanation. They had left behind only these silent monuments and a language that no one could read. "The inscriptions are most dense in the central temple," said Dr. Milani, a graceful blue-skinned being from the Altair system. Her voice carried the musical quality of her species. "We have been studying them for 3,000 years, but the meaning remains hidden." Elena followed the group through streets paved with smooth black stone. The buildings around them were perfect, untouched by time or weather. Whatever technology the architects had used, it had preserved their city exactly as they had left it. As they walked, Elena found herself staring at the symbols carved into every surface. Something about them seemed familiar, though she could not place why. The flowing lines and geometric patterns reminded her of ancient human writing systems she had studied in university. "How many species have tried to translate these writings?" Elena asked. "All of them," replied Professor Thane, an elderly scholar whose gray skin marked him as one of the oldest races in the galaxy. "The Council has declared the architect language officially extinct and untranslatable. We believe it may hold secrets to their advanced technology, but the linguistic structure defies all known patterns." The central temple loomed ahead of them, a massive pyramid with steps leading to a dark entrance. The walls were covered in the largest and most complex inscriptions Elena had ever seen. Symbols flowed across the stone like frozen rivers, telling some vast story that had been lost to time. Inside the temple, the team set up their scanning equipment, while Elena examined the walls more closely. The inscriptions seemed to glow faintly in the dim light, though she wondered if her eyes were playing tricks on her. "These patterns here," Elena said, pointing to a section near the entrance. "They remind me of Proto-Indo-European root structures." Dr. Milani looked up from her scanner. "What is Proto-Indo-European?" "An ancient human language family, the ancestor of many languages on Earth." Elena traced her finger along the carved lines. "And this section looks similar to Sumerian cuneiform but with different spacing rules." Commander Zakth snorted. "Impossible. Human languages developed in isolation on your world. They cannot be related to architect script." Elena continued studying the walls, moving deeper into the temple. The other team members followed, their equipment humming softly as it recorded everything. The inscriptions grew more complex as they went deeper, but to Elena they also became more familiar. "Dr. Vasquez," called Professor Thane, "what do you make of this central chamber?" Elena entered a vast circular room where the walls were covered floor to ceiling with the most intricate carvings she had ever seen. At the center stood a raised platform with a single pillar covered in symbols that seemed to pulse with their own light. As Elena approached the pillar, she felt a strange sensation, as if the symbols were calling to her. She had experienced something similar when studying ancient Sanskrit texts in graduate school, a feeling that the words wanted to be spoken aloud. "The structure here is definitely linguistic," Elena said, her voice echoing in the large chamber. "These symbols represent phonetic sounds, not just pictographs. Many species have attempted phonetic interpretation," Dr. Milani said. "All have failed." Elena studied the pillar more closely. The symbols seemed to shift slightly when she was not looking directly at them, but when she focused, they held still. She began to see patterns that matched linguistic rules she had studied on Earth. "What if the pronunciation follows ancient human vowel shifts?" Elena murmured to herself. She had spent years studying how languages changed over time on Earth. "If I apply the same rules here?" Without thinking, Elena began to sound out the symbols on the pillar. Her voice was tentative at first, but as the sounds formed words, confidence grew in her pronunciation. The words felt right in her mouth, natural in a way that surprised her. The effect was immediate and startling. The symbols on the pillar began to glow brighter, pulsing in rhythm with Elena's voice. The light spread outward, traveling along carved channels in the walls that Elena had not noticed before. "Stop," Commander Zacht shouted, but Elena was already committed to the phrase she was reading. As she spoke the final syllables, the entire chamber filled with soft blue light. The inscriptions on every wall glowed, and a low humming sound began to resonate through the stone. The other team members backed away in alarm, but Elena stood transfixed. "What did you do?" Dr. Milani whispered. Elena stared at the now glowing walls around them. I read it. It says, "Welcome home, children of the first seed. The Guardians have waited long for your return." Professor Thane's elderly face went pale. "That is impossible. You cannot have translated Architect's script." "But I did," Elena said, her voice shaking. "It's not that different from ancient human languages. The grammar is similar to Sanskrit, but with Sumerian word order. Some of the symbols are almost identical to Proto-Indo-European roots." The humming sound grew louder, and they all felt vibrations through the floor. Somewhere deep beneath the temple, something was awakening. Commander Zacht grabbed Elena's arm. "We leave now. You have triggered something dangerous." As they hurried toward the exit, Elena could not stop looking back at the glowing walls. The language had felt so familiar, as if she had spoken it before in dreams she could not remember. How is it possible that a human could read the words of a species that had vanished before Earth's civilization had even begun? Outside the temple, the expedition team packed their equipment with nervous haste. The ground continued to vibrate, and in the distance, they could see lights beginning to appear in other buildings throughout the dead city. "This will require immediate reporting to the council," Professor Thane said, his voice grave. "The implications are disturbing." Elena looked back at the temple one last time as their transport ship prepared for departure. The blue light was spreading throughout the structure, and she could swear she heard voices calling from deep within the stone. As they lifted off from Kethmoran, Elena wondered what they had awakened in that ancient place. More importantly, she wondered why a human could speak the language of the architects when the galaxy's greatest minds had failed. The answer, she suspected, would change everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the universe. 3 days after leaving Kethmoran, Elena could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the glowing symbols from the temple walls. The images felt like memories rather than recent experiences, as if she had seen those symbols somewhere before. The expedition ship was returning to the council station at Centauri Hub, but reports from Kethmoran suggested their departure had been premature. Long-range sensors showed increasing energy readings from the planet's surface. "The dead world was coming alive, Dr. Vasquez. Please report to the conference room," came the announcement. Over the ship's communication system, Elena found the rest of the expedition team gathered around a holographic display showing real-time images from Kethmoran. The planet's surface was now dotted with points of blue light, all centered around architect structures. The lights pulsed in perfect synchronization, like a vast heartbeat. "The energy readings are off the charts," Dr. Milani said, her musical voice tense with worry. "Whatever you activated is spreading across the entire planet." Commander Zacht turned his yellow eyes toward Elena. "We need to understand exactly what you read in that temple. Every word, every symbol." Elena sat down and called up her own recordings from the expedition. The inscription I translated was clearly a greeting, but there were other phrases surrounding it. "Give me time to work through them." As Elena studied the recordings, she noticed details she had missed in the temple. The symbols were not just carved into the stone, they were part of an integrated system. Lines connected different sections, creating what looked like a vast circuit diagram. These aren't just words, Elena realized. They're instructions. The entire temple is some kind of control system. Professor Thane leaned forward. Control system for what? Elena enhanced the image and began tracing the symbol patterns. I think it's a communication array. The phrases I read weren't just a greeting. They were activation codes. The implications hit the room like a cold wave. If Elena was correct, then her reading had not just turned on lights. She had sent a signal. A signal to whom? Dr. Milani whispered. Before Elena could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The captain's voice came over the intercom. All senior staff to the bridge immediately. We have multiple contacts approaching our position. The expedition team rushed to the bridge, where the main display showed their local space. Dozens of energy signatures were moving toward them at impossible speeds. The contacts were too large to be ships, each one registered as massive as a space station. They appeared out of nowhere, the navigation officer reported. No hyperspace signatures, no propulsion readings. They just materialized. Elena stared at the display in growing horror. How long until they reach us? At current speed, 12 minutes, the captain replied. But we have no idea what they are or what they want. As the contacts grew closer, their shapes became visible on the enhanced displays. They were ships, but unlike anything in the current galactic fleets. The vessels were enormous, their hulls covered in the same flowing patterns Elena had seen on Kethmoran. Those designs, Professor Thane said, his voice barely audible. They match architecture. The expedition team watched in stunned silence as the ancient ships took positions around their vessel. The ships made no threatening moves, but their presence was overwhelming. Each one could have contained their entire expedition ship in its cargo bay. Incoming transmission. The communications officer announced. Put it through, the captain ordered. The main display flickered, and then filled with symbols. Architect symbols glowing with the same blue light Elena had seen in the temple. But this time Elena could read them without effort. Greetings, daughter of the distant seed, Elena translated aloud. We have waited long for the awakening call. The return protocol has been initiated. Commander Zakth drew his weapon. How do we know this is not a trap? The symbols on the display changed, and Elena continued translating. Your wariness is understandable but unnecessary. We are the guardians left behind to wait for your species' return to awareness. The time of hiding is ending. My species? Elena asked, though she spoke to empty air. The symbols shifted again. Yes, child of Earth, your people have slept long enough. The galaxy needs its builders again. Dr. Milani stepped forward. Ask them what they mean by builders. Elena found herself speaking without conscious thought, using the architect language as naturally as English. The symbols on the display responded immediately. The architect civilization was human. Elena translated the response. 50,000 years ago, your people ruled the stars. When the Great War came, they chose exile over destruction. Earth was one of many sanctuary worlds where humans were placed in protective sleep. The bridge fell completely silent. Elena could hear only the ship's life support systems and her own rapid heartbeat. That's impossible, Commander Zakth said. Humans are a young species. You only achieved spaceflight 2 centuries ago. The display showed new symbols, and Elena read them with growing amazement. The sanctuary protocol was designed to allow natural redevelopment. Memories were suppressed, technology abandoned. Only the language remained, hidden in the deepest structures of human speech. Elena remembered her strange familiarity with the architect's symbols, the way the words had felt natural in her mouth. The ancient human languages on Earth? They're fragments of the original architect tongue. The awakening was triggered when a child of the bloodline spoke the calling words. Elena continued translating. Across the galaxy, guardian fleets are emerging from their hiding places. The long exile ends now. Professor Thane sank into a chair. The implications are staggering. If this is true, then human civilization is not young at all. You are the inheritors of the galaxy's most advanced culture. The symbols on the display changed to show what looked like star maps. Hundreds of points of light were pulsing across the galaxy, all moving toward systems with human populations. The Guardian fleets are converging on all human worlds. Elena translated. The return protocol requires evaluation of the current generation. Not all sanctuary populations developed as hoped. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Evaluation? What kind of evaluation? The children must prove they have retained the wisdom that their ancestors lost, came the translated response. Power without wisdom led to the Great War. The sanctuary protocol was designed to restore both strength and humility. Commander Zakth raised his weapon again. This sounds like conquest, but the symbols on the display showed something that made Elena gasp. Images of Earth appeared, showing locations she recognized. Stonehenge, the pyramids, Machu Picchu, all were glowing with the same blue light she had seen on Kethmoran. The awakening has begun on Earth as well, Elena translated. Ancient sites are coming online. Humans across your world are beginning to remember what they once were. The captain of their ship received an urgent message from the communication array. Dr. Vasquez, we're getting reports from Earth. Strange phenomena at historical sites. People spontaneously speaking unknown languages. Energy readings from locations that were previously dormant. Elena looked around at the faces of her companions. Fear, wonder, and disbelief warred in their expressions. The galaxy they had known was changing forever. What happens now? Elena asked the display. The symbols that appeared were simple but ominous. Now comes the test. The galaxy will learn whether humanity deserves its inheritance, or whether the sanctuary worlds must sleep once more. As Elena translated these final words, she realized that her simple archaeological expedition had become something much larger. She had not just awakened ancient technology, she had called humanity's ancestors home. Whether that would prove to be salvation or disaster remained to be seen. Elena sat in her quarters aboard the expedition ship, surrounded by holographic displays showing ancient texts from Kethmoran. For the past 2 days, she had been working around the clock to translate more of the architect inscriptions. Each new passage revealed truths that shook her understanding of human history. The Guardian ships maintained their positions around the expedition vessel, but they had made no further contact. Their crews, if they had crews, remained silent. Meanwhile, reports continued streaming in from across the galaxy. Similar fleets were appearing near every human colony world, and the reactions from alien governments ranged from panic to outright hostility. Dr. Vasquez, you need to see this, Dr. Milani said, entering Elena's quarters with obvious urgency. We've received new intelligence from the Council archives. Elena looked up from her work. What kind of intelligence? Historical records that were previously classified. Documents that the Council has kept secret for thousands of years. Dr. Milani activated a new holographic display. Records about the architects and about humanity. The display showed ancient texts from dozens of alien civilizations. Elena scanned them quickly, noting similar themes across different cultures. They all mentioned the Star Builders, Elena said, beings who could reshape worlds and move stellar objects. Look at the descriptions. Dr. Milani pointed to specific passages. Bipedal, average height between 5 and 6 feet, excellent manual dexterity, remarkable adaptability. The descriptions match humans perfectly. Elena felt her stomach tighten. How long have the Council members known this? Some have suspected for centuries, but suspicion is different from proof. Dr. Milani brought up another document. This is a report from when humanity first applied for Council membership. Several species opposed admission based on genetic analysis. The genetic data showed human DNA compared to samples found at architect sites. The matches were undeniable. They knew, Elena whispered. They knew humans were descendants of the architects and they let us join anyway. Not all of them supported the decision, Dr. Milani said grimly. Read this. The document Elena examined was a secret communication between military leaders of several alien species. The content made her blood run cold. They've been monitoring Earth for thousands of years, Elena said. Some species have been actively working to keep humanity primitive. The evidence was clear and disturbing. Certain alien factions had been subtly interfering with human development for millennia. Technological advances that might have led humans to rediscover their heritage had been discouraged or destroyed. The delay in human space development was not natural. It was deliberate. Why would they do this? Elena asked. Commander Zakth appeared in the doorway. Elena noticed he no longer carried his weapon openly, but his posture remained tense. Because we remember the war, Zakth said. 50,000 years ago, the architects nearly destroyed the galaxy. When they vanished, the surviving species swore it would never happen again. Elena stood up, anger building in her chest. So you've been sabotaging us for thousands of years? Not all of us, Zakth replied. But many feared what would happen if humans regained their full capabilities. The architect fleets were unstoppable. They could destroy stars, reshape planets, create life itself. Dr. Milani brought up new images on the display. They showed star systems that had been completely transformed. Planets moved from their original orbits. Artificial worlds built from nothing. The architects ruled a third of the galaxy at their peak, Dr. Milani explained. But their power corrupted them. They began treating other species as subjects rather than equals. The war that followed killed billions. Elena studied the images of devastated worlds and shattered fleets. Is that why they went into exile? Because they realized what they had become? According to these records, yes, Professor Thane said, entering the room with additional data tablets. The architect leadership chose voluntary exile rather than continue the destruction. They scattered their people across hidden worlds and erased their own memories. Elena sat back down, overwhelmed by the implications. So Earth wasn't just a random planet. It was specifically chosen as a sanctuary world. One of many, Professor Thane confirmed. But Earth appears to have been special. The genetic modifications made to humans on your world were more extensive than those on other sanctuary planets. What kind of modifications? Elena asked. Professor Thane activated another display showing complex genetic sequences, enhanced pattern recognition, improved linguistic processing, increased adaptability to different environments. The humans on Earth were designed to be the best of what the architect species could become. Elena looked at her own hands, wondering what other capabilities might be hidden in her genetics. And now the Guardians want to test whether we're worthy of our inheritance. The question is whether modern humans have retained the wisdom to handle such power responsibly, Dr. Milani said. Commander Zakath's communication device beeped with an urgent message. After reading it, his expression grew even more grim. The situation is escalating, he announced. 3 alien fleets have engaged the Guardian ships near the Proxima Centauri colony. The Guardians have not returned fire, but they have disabled the attacking vessels without apparent effort. Elena felt a mixture of pride and fear. The ancient human technology was clearly superior to anything in the current galaxy, but would that superiority lead to the same arrogance that had caused the original war? I need to continue translating, Elena said. There must be more information about this testing process. She turned back to her work, focusing on a section of text that had been giving her trouble. As she worked through the complex symbols, a new understanding began to emerge. The test isn't just about technology, Elena said suddenly. It's about character. The Guardians are evaluating whether humanity has learned to balance power with compassion. The others gathered around as Elena read from the ancient text. The great failing of our people was the belief that superior capability justified superior authority, Elena translated. We became rulers instead of servants, conquerors instead of gardeners. The sanctuary protocol was designed to teach our children humility through limitation. Professor Thane nodded slowly. So the Guardians aren't here to restore human dominance. They're here to see if humans have learned to use power responsibly. Elena continued reading. If the children of the sanctuary worlds prove wise, they will be given the tools to heal the galaxy's wounds. If they prove unchanged, the sanctuary protocol will be renewed and they will sleep for another age. Sleep? Dr. Milani asked. Elena's face went pale as she read the next passage. Memory suppression. Complete technological reset. Humanity would be returned to a pre-industrial state and monitored for another 50,000 years. The weight of responsibility settled on Elena's shoulders like a physical burden. She was not just a translator anymore. She was humanity's representative in a test that would determine the fate of her entire species. How much time do we have? Commander Zakath asked. Elena searched through the text for timing information. The evaluation period is brief. Once all Guardian fleets reach their destinations, the testing begins immediately. And how exactly are humans supposed to pass this test? Dr. Milani asked. Elena found that answer as well, and it filled her with both hope and terror. The test requires humanity to demonstrate wisdom in the face of overwhelming power. The Guardians will offer us our full inheritance, technology that could make us masters of the galaxy. How we choose to use that gift will determine our fate. As Elena spoke these words, she realized that the next few days would determine whether humanity reclaimed its place among the stars, or lost it forever. The bridge of the expedition ship buzzed with constant activity as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Elena stood at the main display, watching as red warning indicators appeared on the galactic map. Each red dot represented a location where Guardian fleets had emerged, and there were hundreds of them. Confirmed sightings at Tau Ceti, Wolf 359, and Kepler 442, the communications officer reported. The fleets are taking positions around all major human colonies. Captain Rodriguez, who had been silent for most of the crisis, finally spoke. Dr. Vasquez, I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. Are these ships hostile? Elena studied the latest translation she had completed. According to the text, they're not here to attack. They're here to observe and evaluate. But Captain, some of these ships are massive. The largest ones register as bigger than Earth's moon. Commander Zakth examined the tactical displays with obvious concern. Ships that size could destroy entire planets. Even if they claim peaceful intentions, their presence is destabilizing the entire galaxy. Dr. Melanie was monitoring communication channels from the Council headquarters. The situation is getting worse. The Andromedans have declared a state of emergency. The Vegan Confederacy is mobilizing their entire fleet. Everyone is preparing for war. Elena felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Her translation in the temple had started this crisis, and now billions of lives hung in the balance. There has to be something in the texts about how to de-escalate this, Elena said, returning to her workstation. As she searched through the architect records, a new message appeared on the main display. The symbols were different this time, more complex and formal. It's another transmission from the Guardian fleet, Elena announced. But this one is addressed to all species in the galaxy, not just humans. The bridge crew gathered around as Elena began translating the formal announcement. To the children of the young worlds, Elena read aloud. We are the guardians of the First Covenant, keepers of the ancient trust. We have returned to fulfill our obligation to both our sleeping children and the innocent peoples who share their space. Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. Keep going. The time of testing has begun. The children of the sanctuary worlds will be offered their full inheritance. How they choose to use this gift will determine the fate of all who dwell among the stars. Elena paused as she read the next section. The implications were staggering. What is it? Dr. Milani asked. They're not just testing humanity, Elena said slowly. They're testing the entire galactic community. How other species react to the return of human power will also influence the final decision. Commander Zakth's yellow eyes narrowed. What kind of test? Elena continued translating. In 72 hours, advanced architect technology will be transferred to human authorities on Earth and the major colonies. The galaxy will then observe how this power is used. The bridge fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. 72 hours, Captain Rodriguez said. That's not much time for humanity to prepare. Or for the galaxy to prepare for what humanity might become, Commander Zakth added grimly. Elena's communication device chimed with an urgent message from Earth. It's from the Global Science Council, she said, reading quickly. They're reporting massive energy spikes at ancient sites worldwide. But that's not all. Humans everywhere are beginning to exhibit new capabilities. What kind of capabilities? Dr. Milani asked. Elena read from the report. Enhanced problem-solving abilities, intuitive understanding of complex systems, spontaneous knowledge of advanced mathematics and physics. It's as if dormant genetic programming is activating. Professor Thane arrived on the bridge carrying a tablet full of data. I've been analyzing the guardianship positions. They're not random. The fleets are positioned to monitor every major trade route and communication relay in the galaxy. They're watching everything, Captain Rodriguez realized. More than watching, Elena said. Reading deeper into the architect texts, they're recording. Every decision made by humans and aliens in the next 72 hours will be permanently documented. The main display updated with new information. Elena's heart sank as she read the latest reports. 3 species have already declared war on the Guardian fleets, she announced. The Rigelian Empire, the Capellan Union, and the Altair Defense League. They're demanding that the Guardians withdraw immediately. Commander Zakth checked his military communications. My government is also mobilizing. The Kronar High Command views the Guardian presence as an act of aggression. Elena turned to face the assembled group. Don't you understand? This is exactly what the Guardians are watching for. How the galaxy reacts to the return of human power will determine whether humanity is allowed to keep it. But the aliens have legitimate concerns, Dr. Milani pointed out. If humans regain architect technology, they could dominate the entire galaxy. Which is precisely why the test includes everyone, Elena said. The Guardians want to see if modern galactic civilization has evolved beyond the fears and rivalries that led to the original war. Captain Rodriguez received an urgent communication from Earth Command. After reading it, his face went pale. Dr. Vasquez, you need to know this. Earth's governments have been contacted directly by the Guardians. They're being offered immediate access to architect databases containing 50,000 years of advanced scientific knowledge. Elena felt her stomach drop. How did Earth respond? The Global Council is meeting in emergency session. Some nations want to accept immediately. Others are demanding guarantees that the technology won't be used for military purposes. And what about the colonies? Elena asked. Professor Thane consulted his data tablet. Mixed reactions. The Mars colonies are enthusiastic about the technological benefits. The outer system settlements are more cautious. They remember being targets of alien aggression before joining the Council. Elena realized that humanity was facing the same divisions that had plagued their species throughout history. The Guardians were not just testing human wisdom, they were testing human unity. I need to communicate with the Guardian fleet, Elena said suddenly. Commander Zakth raised an eyebrow. To what purpose? To ask for more time. 72 hours isn't enough for humanity to make such a momentous decision responsibly. Elena activated the communication array and began speaking in the architect language. Her words appeared as symbols on the main display, glowing with the familiar blue light. The response came quickly. Elena read it with growing concern. They say the timeline cannot be extended. Other forces are at work, and delay would compromise the safety of all involved. What other forces? Dr. Milani asked. Elena continued her exchange with the Guardians. The answers she received made her blood run cold. There are other architect installations throughout the galaxy. Not all of them are controlled by the Guardian AI systems. Some are automated defense networks that will activate if they detect renewed hostilities. Captain Rodriguez gripped the back of his chair. Are you saying there are architect weapon systems that could activate automatically? Exactly, Elena said. The Guardians aren't just here to test humanity. They're here to prevent a repeat of the ancient war that nearly destroyed the galaxy. If the test fails, if violence erupts, the automated defenses will engage. The implications were terrifying. Ancient weapons, more powerful than anything in the current galaxy, lying dormant but ready to activate if certain conditions were met. How do we prevent that? Commander Zakth asked. Elena looked at the faces around her. Human and alien, all united in their fear of what was coming. We passed the test, she said simply. All of us, humans and aliens together, we proved that 50,000 years of separate evolution has taught us wisdom. As she spoke these words, Elena knew that the next 3 days would determine not just humanity's future, but the survival of galactic civilization itself. Elena stood in the main conference chamber of the Council Station at Centauri Hub, facing representatives from 47 different species. The past 72 hours had been the most intense of her life, filled with desperate negotiations and careful translations as the galaxy teetered on the edge of war. The Guardian fleets maintained their positions throughout known space, silent and watchful. True to their word, they had transferred vast databases of architect technology to human authorities. The reaction had been everything Elena had feared and more. The humans now possessed the ability to build planet killers, declared Ambassador Keth of the Andromedans, his crystalline form radiating hostility. They could destroy entire star systems with this technology, and yet they have not, replied Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's representative to the Council. In the past 3 days, human scientists have used the architect databases to develop new medical treatments, improved environmental restoration techniques, and enhanced food production methods. Elena watched the debate from the observer section, her role as translator having evolved into something far more significant. The Guardians had made it clear that she was their primary point of contact, the bridge between ancient and modern humanity. Commander Zakth stood to address the assembly. Helena was surprised to see that his usual aggressive posture had softened. I must speak honestly, Zakth said. My people have spent centuries fearing the return of the architects. We expected conquest, subjugation, the restoration of human dominance over the galaxy. He paused, looking directly at Elena. Instead, we have witnessed something unprecedented. Humanity has been offered godlike power, and their first instinct was to share it. Elena felt a surge of pride as Zakth continued. Human scientists have already begun collaborating with researchers from every council species. The medical advances they developed are being distributed freely. The environmental restoration technology is being offered to worlds damaged by past conflicts. Ambassador Keth's crystalline structure flickered with skepticism. Pretty words, but what guarantee do we have that this cooperation will continue? Power corrupts all species eventually. Dr. Chen stood to respond. The same guarantee you've always had, none. Trust between species cannot be mandated or programmed. It must be earned through consistent action. Elena's communication device chimed with a message from the Guardian fleet. She read it quickly, then requested permission to address the assembly. The Guardians have asked me to share their preliminary evaluation, Elena announced. The chamber fell silent as Elena activated the main display. Symbols appeared, glowing with the familiar blue light of architect technology. The first phase of testing has been completed, Elena translated. Both human and galactic responses have been monitored and recorded. She paused as new symbols appeared. Humanity has demonstrated unexpected restraint in the face of overwhelming technological advantage. They have chosen cooperation over domination, sharing over hoarding. A murmur of surprise rippled through the assembly. However, Elena continued, several alien species have responded with predictable hostility, preparing for wars that exist only in their imagination. Ambassador Keth's form darkened. We are simply being prudent. Elena read the next section of the Guardian message. The Guardians note that fear-based responses are understandable, but they represent the same thinking that led to the original Galactic War 50,000 years ago. Professor Thane, who had been monitoring the situation from the research stations, entered the chamber with urgent news. Delegates, I have important information about the automated defense systems Elena mentioned. We've detected activation signatures from 17 different locations across the galaxy. The chamber erupted in concerned voices. Elena called for quiet so she could translate the Guardian's response to this development. The defense networks are not yet active, but they are responding to the elevated tension in the galaxy. If hostilities break out between any major powers, the systems will interpret this as a resumption of the ancient war. Dr. Chen leaned forward. What would happen then? Elena's face went pale as she read the Guardian response. Complete sterilization of all space-capable civilizations. The defense networks were programmed to prevent another galactic war by any means necessary. The implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. They were not just debating politics, they were deciding whether galactic civilization would survive. How do we prevent activation? Asked Ambassador Thren of the Vegan Confederacy. Elena communicated with the Guardians and received a response that surprised everyone. The defense networks will remain dormant if the galaxy demonstrates that it has evolved beyond the conflicts of the past. This requires unprecedented cooperation between all species. What kind of cooperation? Commander Zakth asked. The Guardian response was specific and challenging. The establishment of a joint galactic project that requires the combined resources and knowledge of all species, something that can only be achieved through true partnership. Dr. Chen smiled. I believe we have exactly such a project. She activated her own display, showing data from Earth's research centers. The architect databases contained the theoretical framework for what they called the Genesis engine, a device capable of creating new habitable worlds from lifeless planets. But building it requires resources and expertise from dozens of different species. Elena translated the Guardian response to this proposal. This is acceptable. The Genesis project will serve as the final test of galactic cooperation. Over the following hours, the Assembly worked out the details of an unprecedented collaboration. Each species would contribute their unique capabilities to the project. The crystalline Andromedans would provide computing matrices. The Kronar would handle heavy construction. The Vegans would contribute their biological expertise. Humanity's role would be to serve as coordinators, using their inherited understanding of architect technology to guide the project. But there's one more requirement, Elena said, reading a final message from the Guardians. The first world created by the Genesis engine must be designated as a shared colony, populated by volunteers from all participating species. Ambassador Keth's form flickered. You ask us to trust our people to a world controlled by humans. Not controlled, Dr. Chen corrected. Shared. The Genesis project will create a truly integrated galactic society. Elena watched as representatives from dozens of species debated the proposal. Fear and hope warred in their discussions, but gradually, consensus emerged. The vote was unanimous, surprising even Elena. As the assembly agreed to the Genesis project, Elena felt a change in the atmosphere. The symbols on her communication device glowed brighter, and she sensed approval from the watching Guardians. "The test has been passed," Elena announced, translating the final Guardian message. "Both humanity and the galactic community have demonstrated the wisdom necessary to inherit the Architect legacy." The chamber erupted in cheers, but Elena raised her hand for attention. "The Guardians are withdrawing to their hidden bases, but they will continue to monitor galactic development. The Architect databases will remain available to humanity, with the understanding that this knowledge belongs to all species." As the assembly dispersed to begin planning the Genesis project, Elena remained behind to consider what had been accomplished. Humanity had reclaimed its heritage, but more importantly, the galaxy had proven it could overcome the ancient fears and rivalries that had once brought it to the brink of destruction. Commander Zakth approached her as the chamber emptied. "Dr. Vasquez, I owe you an apology. When this began, I saw you as a threat to galactic stability." Elena smiled. "And now?" "Now I see you as the translator who helped us find a new language, not just between humans and aliens, but between fear and hope." Elena looked out at the stars through the chamber's viewing windows. Somewhere out there, the Guardian fleets were returning to their hidden bases, their long vigil finally complete. Humanity had awakened from its 50,000-year exile, but they had not awakened alone. They had awakened as part of a galactic community that had learned to choose cooperation over conflict. The Genesis project would take decades to complete, but Elena knew it was just the beginning. The galaxy had proven it was ready for the challenges ahead, and humanity had found its place not as rulers, but as partners in the greatest adventure of all, building a better future among the stars. As Elena prepared to return to Earth, she reflected on the ancient words that had started it all. "Welcome home, children of the first seed." Now she understood their full meaning. Humanity was home, not just on Earth, but in the vast community of worlds that spanned the galaxy. The language was no longer extinct. It lived on in the voices of all species working together toward a common future.